Well, Donald Trump's escalating trade war impacts many sectors, and that includes pharmaceutical drugs. The White House has issued a new warning to drug makers to cut their prices or face the consequences. Mark Carcasole is following this for us. Hey, Mark. So President Trump made some strong demands on American pharmaceutical companies. What else can you tell us on that front?
The 17 American pharmaceutical companies, to be exact, received letters from the White House telling them they need to cut their prices to be more similar to the prices being paid by those overseas. This follows up on an executive order that the president signed in May, promising that there would be lower drug prices. The thing that complicates matters, in addition to the passing of this August 1st deadline for a trade deal with Canada, is that many Canadian pharmaceutical companies, like Apotex behind me, the largest Canadian producer of generic pharmaceuticals, they're now wondering what this all means for them, because as recently as early July, the president had mused publicly about the potential for tariffs up to possibly 200% on foreign pharmaceuticals coming into the U.S. Now, it's believed by many in the industry that that particular threat isn't really meant to target Canada, but it does indirectly. If we take a look at where most of the ingredients in pharmaceuticals consumed in the U.S. come from, we can show you that a study shows that only 12% of them come from within the U.S. The rest of them come from places like India, 32%, 20% from the EU, 13% listed in this U.S. pharmacopoeia report from others, which we would assume would probably include Canada, which is said to make up about 5% or less of that supply. 8% of those drugs, or their ingredients in them, come from China, and 15% from unknown, which may also factor in Canada. So Canadian companies are left wondering now, are we at threat of this tariff, or do we possibly stand to gain, because President Trump has told American pharmaceutical companies that they need to reduce prices, or they may do something like take ingredients from places overseas. Does Canada count as one of those foreign places that perhaps the U.S. may seek more drug ingredients from? So they're really not quite sure what to expect here. We do know that many of these companies and the companies that the groups that oversee them, like the Canadian Generic Pharmaceutical Association, believe that many of the ingredients that they export to the U.S. are covered under CUSMA. The Canadian Generic Pharmaceutical Association does have a legal opinion which tells them that the things that the companies they represent overseas would be covered under the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement, and nothing that they send over to the U.S. has been tariffed at this point. So they believe they do stand in good standing, but they're not really quite sure. One of the things that President Trump has said in that thread about those 200% tariffs is that he would give these companies a year and a half to move their manufacturing over to the United States. Jim Keon, the president of the CGPA, says that would not be nearly enough time. It would not be feasible at all given the time and the cost required. Have a listen.
The margins are low. If companies are operating in Canada or elsewhere, and products coming from India, they're usually doing that for the reasons of cost. And in Canada, we have a strong reputation. We have a good regulator at Health Canada. And we are competitive on a cost basis. To go and build a new plant into the United States is going to take hundreds of millions of dollars and time. It won't happen in a year or year and a half.
Now, again, I must remind people, Canadian pharmaceutical companies right now, not really sure where this stands. Are they subject to a potential tariff at some point? They believe that what they're sending right now falls within the guidelines of CUSMA, but there is this potential threat of 200% tariffs. Does that involve them or not? They don't really know. They do say that if they were to fall under that tariff, not only would it impact the cost of drugs in the U.S. for any drugs that include ingredients that come over from Canada, but they say it may cause some Canadian companies to decide that it's not worth doing business in the U.S., and it may shorten the supply of drugs in the U.S. and in Canada. So a lot of unanswered questions here that they don't really know about. Industry representatives have been lobbying the federal government to not issue retaliatory tariffs on American pharmaceuticals coming back over the U.S. because the industry is so closely linked. The Canadian Association for Pharmacy Distribution Management says overall Canada imports about $30 billion a year in pharmaceuticals from the U.S. So there's such tightly linked economies that any uncertainty at all could be very detrimental. So they're sitting in their boardrooms here at Apotex or wherever it may be, just trying to figure out what happens next for them.
Thanks for this, Mark. That is the CBC's Mark Carcasole reporting.